My name is Daniel Steinberg. I'm the marketing director for Viewabill. I'm here with Robbie Friedman. He's the CEO and co-founder of Viewabill. And with me today is Patrick Johansen. Now, Patrick Johansen is the director of business development at Brinks Gilson and Lyon. And he's an award-winning writer and presenter. And he's the first law firm professional certified in both law firm management and pricing. He's a former board member of ALA Greater Chicago and LMA Chicago. And Patrick currently serves on Law 360's Legal Industry Advisory Board. And he developed the first law firm pricing blog, which is patrickonpricing.com, and the first Twitter account dedicated to law firm pricing news. Patrick, welcome. Welcome to our podcast today.
Thank you.
And the reason that I thought that we would have a very fruitful conversation is because Viewabill is what we do. We're a cloud-based solution that enables law firms to share pre-bill activity in real time to build strong attorney-client relationships. And obviously there's an intersection between what we do and your area of expertise, legal pricing. And I thought that maybe in light of the news from last week about Jackson Lewis, we would talk about the billable hour, which is probably a conversation as old as the practice of law itself.
I look forward to it.
It's been said that the origin of the billable hour comes from clients who didn't trust their lawyers. Why, in your opinion, does there seem to be such a huge shift in sentiment in favor of flat fee billing and AFAs today?
Well, first of all, let me set the record straight. Historically, the billable hour actually came about in Boston in the right before the Great Depression. Prior to 1919, lawyers actually worked on alternative fee arrangements throughout their entire careers. It was only in 1919 when a Harvard Law graduate who's very interested in the scientific method of Frederick Winslow Taylor of the 19-teens that he brought that to his new law firm, Hale and Dorr, and started to see if he could be a little more efficient in what the lawyers did, and that turned in from timesheets into billable hours. So we actually have only been doing this grand experiment for roughly 100 years, and it was on the law firm side. So we only have ourselves to blame for whatever craziness law firm billable hours have caused us. Having said that, the huge shift really took place as a result of the Great Recession. Although the ABA had actually started studying the alternative billing models, as they called it, back in the 80s. They created a task force and then they created a commission. And the reality was that there were other ways of helping lawyers to price their work, even though we haven't called it pricing until the last few years. So we've been, as an industry, looking at this on the peripheral at least, or perhaps more appropriately on the cutting edge. And so early adopters have been doing this for 20 some odd years. What's going on now is, as a result of the Great Recession, clients have pushed back on rates first and foremost, and then secondly, fees generally, to say, you're billing us too much, you're too high, we need you to come down. And so that's what's driven this new sort of pricing excitement, if you will. It's probably too strong of a word. So the other that's a bad word. So the other rationale on the client side is they certainly always want transparency, they want certainty, and sometimes even predictability. There are several motivators on the client side. And hourly bills don't allow for that because it's almost an open invitation to keep working. There's no control, which is why Viewabill is so fabulous in the marketplace, because it's allowing clients now to see real-time data on what's going on their accounts, and that's helping immensely with client relationships. So kudos to you all for bringing that to the market and making it so easy and so functional. But that's where the disconnect has come in what we now are calling pricing, is that clients believe that a alternative fee arrangement, some people like to call it an appropriate fee arrangement, is really helping to keep a cap, to keep some constraints on how lawyers charge clients.
Got it. Let me ask you, Robbie, does the topic of hourly billing versus AFAs necessitate choosing sides? I mean, is it an either-or type of choice for a firm?
I look at the time that lawyers put in as their inventory. And just like any business, inventory can be priced different ways depending on what that inventory is. And some arrangements make sense as a billable hour type arrangement. Some make sense as an AFA, but they're not in conflict with each other. They're really both about providing the right unit of measurement for the result, in my opinion. And sometimes, the result that a client is seeking is predictability. Sometimes they're seeking, sometimes the matter itself does not have that predictability built in, and they need a more flexible arrangement as well. So I think saying we're all hourly billing or we are all AFAs is kind of missing the point again, potentially, and swinging too far the other way, where what we should really be doing is saying, what's the right way to price our inventory?
Mm-hmm. Patrick, it's been said that a lot of AFAs are derived from hourly billing thinking. That the starting point in many law firms is what's the amount that they would have been charged on a conventional hourly basis. So how do you distinguish a true AFA from an AFA in hourly billing clothing?
To some extent, you never will. Because AFAs come from the firm's billing history. Law firms can only figure out how to create AFAs based upon what they've done historically. And historically, they have only gauged their matters by hours. And ultimately by invoices, they've known which invoices the clients have paid and which ones the clients have pushed back on pre-recession to say, that seems a bit high, maybe we need to take something off or you need to write off something. So our industry is based on the hourly bills, based on the billable hour. That's the answer I want to give. So our industry is based on the billable hour, and that foundation cannot go away. We're eroding that reliance as we move into AFAs, and that's why pricing professionals have become so prevalent now, at least in the AmLaw 200. We're almost at 100 full-time employees dedicated to pricing, because they can look at the history and say, yes, this is what it cost on the billable hour model. We can now look at what our true costs are, and more importantly, what's the value of the service we're providing based upon that inventory, and come up with a true pricing number, a true fee arrangement that reflects the value of what the client is receiving.
And Patrick, I think that brings up an interesting point. I just want to jump in here for a second, and that is, how do firms gauge their historical performance? It's easy for us to say, yeah, the firms look back and they see how these previous arrangements went. Certainly certain things are analogous and they can apply it forward. Something that I struggle with is, how are the firms assessing where, a historical matter went wrong or could have gone better, or what type of insight does a firm have so that next time they are doing an AFA or billable hour arrangement or whatever they're doing, how can they iterate and know, where the appropriate touch points are and where the points are where they can improve for that next time? Because I think the feeling might be among clients that no matter what, the firm is just going to win, whether it's flat fee or billable hour. And if there isn't that type of insight and scrutiny that the firm does with itself, maybe that feeling is justified. I don't know.
There will always be an uncertainty in the historical data, because as a general rule, the industry did not need to be overly analytical about its profitability. The profits were always there, the rates were always going up. So it was only the most innovative and most forward-thinking firms that over the last maybe 15 years, I'm trying to think if I know of a firm more than 20 years ago, who would have been starting to look at the billing data and invoices as true metrics to be analyzed and deciphered and sort of predicted forward for the next time. So we're always going to have every firm, to some extent, not knowing how to improve upon the past, because they didn't have to do it back then, and now it's so much data and so overwhelming that it's really difficult to go back. So it's very much, I think, on an ad hoc basis when something comes up to rely on lawyer, particularly partner memory, to say, oh, that matter didn't go so well. We need to look at either the fees or the hours or whatever other scenario would have popped up to say, this is how it went wrong. Unfortunately, law firms are realizing that they can have resources dedicated to that in terms of pricing professionals who can go backwards and crunch the data, and as things come up on a moving forward basis, they can go back and pull the historical records. They have the time. It's assigned to them in their duties, and their that's why they're at the firm, is to not only be able to have the time to go back and look at the costs and look at the data, but then also to help moving forward with what's the value to the client and how do we crunch the numbers to give a proposal that is beneficial to both sides. That's the answer. That's the answer to the first half of the question. There was so then the second half was, are the firms always going to win? And the answer is no. The firms aren't always going to win, and that's why, in part, there are pricing professionals being hired, because firms that are losing are realizing they can't afford too many big losses. But there should be, if pricing professionals are doing their job properly, there should be a win-win scenario in there for both the client and the firm, because we're sort of on one team and we've figured out how the relationship works best for both. Because in the end, if it doesn't work best for both, there's not going to be a long-term relationship. Someone's going to say, I can do better without this relationship.
Right. And like you said, we have to start somewhere, I think. So even right now, today, the historical analysis might be somewhat limited because, maybe not all data points were being collected back then, but definitely the industry seems to be getting more aware of at least this type of exercise. And I would expect in the next couple of years, we would see a lot more sophistication in terms of how these AFAs are being arrived at.
Absolutely. There's no question that new players and new data are coming into the legal market that are allowing that to happen. I can think of one vendor in particular who's been able to capture a lot of e-billing data, in terms of into the billions of dollars, and so clients are able to tap into that data and see how the industry as a whole operates, and they can look at their own financial data to see how any individual firm compares to the other firms that client is using. As a general rule, the large clients certainly use multiple firms, and so they on their end have that data and are using that as leverage to push against their current firms and prospective firms to say, we think we know how much this matter should cost, so we want to see you, partnering with us to ensure that we're in the ballpark of our number, so to speak. So,
and do you think that law firms? Do you think there's an opportunity for law firms to work together and share data with each other, not necessarily about specific clients or specific matters, obviously, but just in terms of, hey, this is how we're thinking of our AFAs. This is how we're structuring these types of situations with our clients. Do you feel that firms are keeping that sort of proprietary as a competitive advantage, or is there an acknowledgement that the more those structures are shared, the more data the industry could collect, the better the pricing industry-wide can become?
Yes, there are essentially three aspects to that future, if you will. The first is very legalistic. When you start sharing even beyond a very general level, then lawyers get concerned about antitrust violations. So we will never be able to get to a place where we share a lot, because then we run into those specific legal issues. So there will be limits in the future to what we share. But secondly, we are sharing as best we can as a nascent profession. The Legal Marketing Association created about 1.5 years ago a client value shared interest group that is focused on pricing, process improvement, and project management. And the annual meeting that it holds every year brings together a couple hundred people from around the world, not only the U.S., which is probably 95% of the attendees, but from Canada and Australia and England are represented to talk about how we're approaching this this new endeavor. And so there is some sharing that's going on there. And I know I said I had a third answer, but I don't remember what it is now.
Well, I was interested when you were talking about the U.S. versus the other Australian.
Yes. Yes.
This discussion about the hourly rate, the billable hour versus the AFAs, how does that relate to other countries? In regards to what's going on over here, are they having the same conversation? Is it the same intensity?
Certainly Australia and the United Kingdom are having the same discussions, and in fact are ahead of North America. Australia in particular has a very a strong alternative fee arrangement sort of culture, if you will, and that is in large part all professional services down under have been sort of playing off of each other in this march away from the billable hour. The UK has been on the forefront of this, and I think probably has the most pricing professionals outside of the US who have been doing this actually longer. The very first law firm pricing director actually started in London, Stuart Dodds, and then he came over to the United States to work for Baker & McKenzie, where he is today. So this profession certainly, you can say, began in the UK, and it continues. They just don't have the volume of law firms over there that we do here to have the quantity of people doing law firm pricing. They may beat us on quality. That might be an interesting horse race.
And I might venture into a little bit of a controversial area here, although my intention is to actually get controversial. But I'm curious, what do you think the U.S. legal market would look like if, like the U.K., we had non-lawyers who were able to own the firms?
I think it would not be as radical as everyone is fearful it might become. I think there's a high level of paranoia among traditional. Well, I shouldn't even say that. No, I won't say there's high paranoia among traditional firms, because the traditional firms believe everything's going to be status quo always. And to some extent that's true because of the clients. Clients aren't necessarily running and screaming to the marketplace saying, we want ABSs, we want MDPs, we want firms that don't send hourly bills. Those options are here in the United States today, and they have been for multiple years. And although those individual firms are growing, they're not exploding, and the clients aren't demanding that the traditional structure change, at least not that quickly. So I don't think that the legal industry's future is going to be as radically different as the chatter suggests.
Patrick, I'd like to ask you a question that we spoke about the first time that we were ever introduced to each other, which is, do AFAs significantly reduce the percentage of clients' requests for invoice discounts that are so axiomatic to the billable hour structure?
Well, they certainly should. I mean, the hourly discount, surprise, surprise to everyone, is in fact a type of fee arrangement. It's just that it's no longer the alternate. It has been the status quo for the last 30 to 50 years. And it's a very valid type of fee arrangement. In fact, in the continuum of fee arrangements that I created last year, it's the very first on the far left side, which is the very traditional model, and the far right side, which is as untraditional as you can get, is value-based billing. And so there are lots of different AFAs in between, or not in between there. But what's important in your question is that fee arrangements of the future should be a two-way street, should be about a communication and a negotiation between the client and the law firm. And when that happens, both sides understand expectations and goals and can come to an agreement as to how to move forward in the matter and with the fee arrangement. Too often now what happens is law firms get retained on a standard hourly rate and they start working and the meter starts, and the client just doesn't know where the meter is, and more importantly, where is it stopping. And so because of that, we end up with a disconnect between what the client feels is reasonable, therefore valuable for this type of matter and service, and what the lawyer says, this is the inventory, this is the production, this is what it cost me to deliver this service to you, whether or not it's within the bounds of appropriateness. So that's where we get the discounting going on. In a good AFA with both sides speaking, there should never be one discount. It should absolutely reduce clients' requests down to zero because everyone's on the same page.
Mm-hmm. Now, Robbie, I know with Viewabill, one of the things that I've heard you talk about is that Viewabill, even with the hourly structure, has also the ability to eliminate the request for discounts. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. I mean, and it's kind of exactly what Patrick was just saying, and that is, the more aligned the client and the firm is, the less need there is for write-off requests or discount requests. And that can be achieved by having upfront discussions and making sure everybody's on the same page as it relates to an AFA. Or, in some situations, there is the billable hour scenario, and you can't always plan the billable hours ahead of time. But the more informed both sides are, they're kind of having that recalibration constantly. And it just both billable hours with Viewabill and a really good AFA where everybody understands what's included, what's not included, and how it works. they both just eliminate any surprises, and surprises is where write-offs come from.
Mm-hmm. It sounds, from what you're both saying, it sounds like it really just boils down to the communication, the caliber of communication between the client and the firm.
And I think that's everything. I think that's kind of the crux of the issue that the legal industry has been trying to avoid for a long time. Trying to make the work cheaper, or trying to throw in some freebies. That doesn't get to the point, which is, if both sides are communicating and both sides are aligned, it doesn't always come down to dollars. It comes down to, I want to know what I'm paying for, and I want to pay for what I'm expecting. So yeah.
Patrick,
and Dan,
yeah, I'm sorry.
Daniel, I'll just offer a humorous answer to that, which is, if the clients and the lawyers can agree up front on the arrangement and get that memorialized in their documents, then they never have to speak again. Yeah. Because the expectations are set. So to some extent, you can almost say no communication is necessary because you've done it all up front. But as I said, that's a bit of a humorous answer, because we know that's technically not what happens. But if we talk well at the beginning, then there should be and can be no surprises down the line.
And a story that I tell sometimes, and this happened, it was about 2 years ago. It kind of shows the flip side of all of this. I was working with a law firm. I retained a law firm to help with an agreement, and I budgeted in my mind, I think it was like $20,000 to get this work done. And the law firm went away. They worked somewhat, I don't know, for about a week. They gave me an agreement, and clear that a lot of work went into it, but there was a lot of work that still needed to be done. And my assumption, I used to practice law. I know how much work goes into this stuff. My assumption was, I'm close to my budget here. And what I did was I took the agreement and I spent, I don't know, maybe 50 hours just fixing it myself. And I fixed it myself. I got the bill, and the total bill was $8,000. If I had known that I still had $12,000 of space, I would have far preferred to just give the agreement back and say, fix this up, etc. But because I didn't know, I actually hurt both of us. They made less money, and I did work that I didn't want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. It reminds me of, there was a restaurant that I went to once where this was kind of a theme restaurant. It was an Italian restaurant downtown in Little Italy, and the menus didn't have any prices on them. And you can imagine, ordering food, they'd have a meal, but they wouldn't tell you how much it is. And if you can't even enjoy what you're getting, or ask for more, or maybe you want to send something back, if you're completely in the dark about the pricing. And it was impossible to enjoy the meal, I have to say.
Which, Daniel, that goes to what I've been trying to preach for the last 2 years. Basic economics is always about an exchange. That you can't get away from Economics 101. Everything is an exchange. And so the law firm's service to the client is exchanged for the fees received. And the communication that Robbie talked about earlier is about getting to a point where we both agree on the value of that exchange. And when clients and law firms agree on the value of the exchange, everyone's happy.
Okay, we're just about out of time, Patrick. I want to thank you again. You clearly are an expert in your field, and know from its origins all the way through today. And I think that the industry can only improve with your participation at every level. Can you tell us, is there anything that you'd like to plug personally?
As I said, the blog is there as a resource for law firms. That's sort of the little catchphrase I created for it. And it's a hobby that I fell into 2 years ago after I earned my certification, and I thought that the industry just needed to learn this information, and the blog was the best way for me to share it with folks. So I hope people use it, find it valuable. There's that idea of exchange, and that we all, aren't afraid of pricing and are able to learn from each other and improve. That's the goal of the blog.
Yeah, I definitely found it informative. I spent quite a while on it. It's Patrick on Pricing, www.patrickonpricing.com. You can learn a lot about what's going on in the legal pricing world today. And this has been Daniel Steinberg for Viewabill with Robbie Friedman, co-founder and CEO of Viewabill. Thanks, Patrick. I look forward to picking up the conversation next time.
I look forward to it.